Welcome to the Quiet Corner Bedtime Stories. I'm Annie, and alongside my co-host Eamon, we're here to share our favourite classic tales, accompanied by soothing music, to help you relax or guide you into a peaceful night's sleep. If you're enjoying our stories, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, or our website, where you can get more insights into this podcast and vote on future story selections. It also really helps us if you leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast platform. Your rating and reviews are vital. They help the podcast grow and reach new listeners. Thank you to everybody who has left a rating or review. We love reading all your comments. If you would like to support us further, just go to either lennyfm.com or Ko-Fi, kofi.com, and search for the Quiet Corner Bedtime Stories, where for less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can help us on our mission to keep these beautiful classic stories alive. All links will be in the show notes below. Thank you for all your support and sweet dreams. Tonight I will continue reading to you from 8 Cousins by Louisa May Alcott. In the previous chapter, Rose's sprained ankle forces her to rest, and Mac helps her pass the time. She finds herself caught in a dilemma after succumbing to peer pressure from her friend Annabel Bliss to pierce her ears against her uncle's wishes. The chapter explored themes of peer pressure, vanity, and the consequences of impulsive decisions. Now it's time to relax and forget about all your worries from the day as you snuggle up under your favourite blanket as I read to you from 8 Cousins. Chapter 16. Bread and Buttonholes. What in the world is my girl thinking about with such a solemn face? Asked Dr. Alec, coming into the study one November day to find Rose sitting there with a very thoughtful aspect. Uncle, I want to have some serious conversation with you, if you have time, she said, coming out of a brown study as if she had not heard his question. I'm entirely at your service and most happy to listen, he answered in his politest manner, for when Rose put on her womanly little airs, he always treated her with a playful sort of respect that pleased her very much. Now, as he sat down beside her, she said very soberly, I've been trying to decide what trade I would learn, and I want you to advise me. Trade, my dear? And Dr. Alec looked so astonished that she hastened to explain. I forgot that you didn't hear the talk about it up at Cozy Corner. You see, we used to sit under the pines and sew and talk a great deal. All the ladies, I mean, and I liked it very much. Mother Atkinson thought that everyone should have a trade, or something to make a living out of. For rich people may grow poor, you know, and poor people have to work. Her girls were very clever and could do ever so many things, and Aunt Jessie thought the old lady was right. So when I saw how happy and independent those young ladies were, I wanted to have a trade, and then it wouldn't matter about money, though I like to have it well enough. Dr. Alec listened to this explanation with a curious mixture of surprise, pleasure, and amusement in his face, and looked at his little niece as if she had suddenly changed into a young woman. She had grown a great deal in the last 6 months, and an amount of thinking had gone on in that young head which would have astonished him greatly could he have known it all. For Rose was one of the children who observe and meditate much, and now and then surprise their friends by a wise or curious remark. I quite agree with the ladies and shall be glad to help you decide on something if I can," said the doctor seriously. "What do you incline to? A natural taste or talent is a great help in choosing, you know." "I haven't any talent or any especial taste that I can see, and that is why I can't decide. So I think it would be a good plan to pick up some very useful business and learn it, because I don't do it for pleasure, you see, but as a part of my education and to be ready in case I'm ever poor," answered Rose, looking as if she rather longed for a little poverty so that her useful gift might be exercised. "Well now, there is one very excellent, necessary, and womanly accomplishment that no girl should be without, for it is to help to rich and poor, and the comfort of families depends upon it. This fine talent is neglected nowadays and considered old-fashioned, which is a sad mistake, and one that I don't mean to make in bringing up my girl. It should be a part of every girl's education, and I know of a most accomplished lady who will teach you in the best and pleasantest manner." "Oh, what is it?" cried Rose eagerly, charmed to be met in this helpful and cordial way. "Housekeeping." "Is that an accomplishment?" asked Rose, while her face fell, for she had indulged in all sorts of vague, delightful daydreams. "Yes, it is one of the most beautiful as well as useful of all the arts a woman can learn. Not so romantic, perhaps, as singing, painting, writing, or teaching even, but one that makes many people happy and comfortable, and home the sweetest place in the world. Yes, you may open your big eyes, but it is a fact that I had rather see you a good housekeeper than the greatest belle in the city. It need not interfere with any talent you may possess, but it is a necessary part of your training, and I hope that you will set about it at once now that you are well and strong." "Who is the lady?" asked Rose, rather impressed by her uncle's earnest speech. "Aunt Plenty. Is she accomplished?" began Rose in a wondering tone, for this great aunt of hers had seemed the least cultivated of them all. "In the good old-fashioned way, she is very accomplished, and has made this house a happy home to us all, ever since we can remember. She is not elegant, but genuinely good, and so beloved and respected that there will be universal mourning for her when her place is empty. No one can fill it, for the solid, homely virtues of the dear soul have gone out of fashion, as I say, and nothing new can be half so satisfactory, to me at least. I should like to have people feel so about me. Can she teach me to do what she does and to grow as good?" asked Rose, with a little prick of remorse for even thinking that Aunt Plenty was a commonplace old lady. "Yes, if you don't despise such simple lessons as she can give. I know it would fill her dear old heart with pride and pleasure to feel that anyone cared to learn from her, for she fancies her day gone by. Let her teach you how to be what she has been, a skilful, frugal, cheerful housewife, the maker and keeper of a happy home, and by you will see what a valuable lesson it is." "I will, Uncle, but how shall I begin?" "I'll speak to her about it, and she will make it all right with Debbie, for cooking is one of the main things, you know." "So it is. I don't mind that a bit, for I like to mess and used to try at home. But I had no one to tell me, and so I never did much but spoil my aprons. Pies are great fun, only Debbie is so cross. I don't believe she will ever let me do a thing in the kitchen." "Then we'll cook in the parlour. I fancy Aunt Plenty will manage her, so don't be troubled. Only mind this. I'd rather you learned how to make good bread than the best pies ever baked. when you bring me a handsome, wholesome loaf, entirely made by yourself, I shall be more pleased than if you offered me a pair of slippers, embroidered in the very latest style. I don't wish to bribe you, but I'll give you my heartiest kiss and promise to eat every crumb of the loaf myself." "It's a bargain. Come and tell Aunt all about it, for I'm in a hurry to begin," cried Rose, dancing before him toward the parlour, where Aunt Plenty sat alone, knitting contentedly, yet ready to run at the first call for help of any sort from any quarter. No need to tell how surprised and gratified she was at the invitation she received to teach the child the domestic arts which were her only accomplishments, nor to relate how energetically she set about her pleasant task. Debbie dared not grumble, for Aunt Plenty was the one person whom she obeyed, and Phoebe openly rejoiced, for these new lessons brought Rose nearer to her and glorified the kitchen in the good girl's eyes. To tell the truth, the elder aunts had sometimes felt that they did not have quite their share of the little niece who had won their hearts long ago and was the sunshine of the house. They talked it over together sometimes, but always ended by saying that as Alec had all the responsibility, he should have the larger share of the dear girl's love and time, and they would be contented with such crumbs of comfort as they could get. Dr. Alec had found out this little secret, and after reproaching himself for being blind and selfish, was trying to devise some way of mending matters without troubling anyone, when Rose's new whim suggested an excellent method of weaning her a little from himself. He did not know how fond he was of her till he gave her up to the new teacher, and often could not resist peeping in at the door to see how she got on, or stealing sly looks through the slide when she was deep in dough, or listening intently to some impressive lecture from Aunt Plenty. They caught him at it now and then, and ordered him off the premises at the point of the rolling pin, or if unusually successful, and therefore in a milder mood, they lured him away with bribes of gingerbread, a stray pickle, or a tart that was not quite symmetrical enough to suit their critical eyes. Of course he made a point of partaking copiously of all the delectable messes that now appeared at table, for both the cooks were on their mettle, and he fared sumptuously every day, but an especial relish was given to any dish, when in reply to his honest praise of it, Rose coloured up with innocent pride and said modestly, "I made that, Uncle, and I'm glad you like it." It was some time before the perfect loaf appeared, for bread making is an art not easily learned, and Aunt Plenty was very thorough in her teaching. So Rose studied yeast first, and through various stages of cake and biscuit, came at last to the crowning glory of the handsome, wholesome loaf. It appeared at tea time on a silver plate, proudly borne in by Phoebe, who could not refrain from whispering with a beaming face as she set it down before Dr. Alec, "Ain't it just lovely, sir?" "It is a regularly splendid loaf. Did my girl make it all herself?" he asked, surveying the shapely, sweet-smelling object with real interest and pleasure. "Every particle herself, and never asked a bit of help or advice from anyone," answered Aunt Plenty, folding her hands with an air of unmitigated satisfaction, for her pupil certainly did her great credit. "I've had so many failures and troubles that I really thought I never should be able to do it alone. Debbie let one splendid batch burn up because I forgot it. She was there and smelled it, but never did a thing, for she said when I undertook to bake bread I must give my whole mind to it. Wasn't it hard, She might have called me at least, said Rose, recollecting with a sigh the anguish of that moment. She meant that you should learn by experience, as Rosamond did in that little affair of the purple jar, you remember. I always thought it very unfair in her mother not to warn the poor thing a little bit, and she was regularly mean when Rosamond asked for a bowl to put the purple stuff in, and she said in such a provoking way, "I did not agree to lend you a bowl, but I will, my dear." Ah, I always want to shake that hateful woman, though she was a moral mamma. Never mind her now, but tell me about my loaf, said Dr. Alec, much amused at Rose's burst of indignation. There's nothing to tell, Uncle, except that I did my best, gave my mind to it, and sat watching over it all the while it was in the oven, till I was quite baked myself. Everything went right this time, and it came out a nice, round, crusty loaf as you see. Now taste it and tell me if it is good as well as handsome. Must I cut it? Can't I put it under a glass cover and keep it in the parlour, as they do wax flowers and fine works of that sort? What an idea, Uncle! It would mould and be spoiled. Besides, people would laugh at us and make fun of my old-fashioned accomplishment. You promised to eat it, and you must, not all at once, but as soon as you can, so I can make you some more. Dr. Alec solemnly cut off his favourite crusty slice and solemnly ate it. Then he wiped his lips and, brushing back Rose's hair, solemnly kissed her on the forehead, saying heartily, "My dear, it is perfect bread, and you are an honour to your teacher. When we have our model school, I shall offer a prize for the best bread, and you will get it." "I've got it already, and I'm quite satisfied," said Rose, slipping into her seat and trying to hide her right hand, which had a burn on it. But Dr. Alec saw it, guessed how it came there, and after tea insisted on easing the pain, which she would hardly confess she felt. "Aunt Clara says I am spoiling my hands, but I don't care, for I've such good times with Aunt Plenty, and I think she has enjoyed it as much as I have. Only one thing troubles me, Uncle, and I want to ask you about it," said Rose, as they paced up and down the hall in the twilight, the bandaged hand very carefully laid on Dr. Alec's arm. "More little confidences? I like them immensely, so tell away, my dear." "Well, you see, I feel as if Aunt Peace would like to do something for me. I found out what it can be. You know she can't go about like Aunt Plenty, and we are so busy nowadays that she is rather lonely, I'm afraid. So I want to take lessons in sewing from her. She works so beautifully, and it is a useful thing, you know, and I ought to be a good needlewoman as well as cook, oughtn't I, Uncle?" "Bless your kind little heart. That is what I was thinking of the other day when Aunt Peace said she saw you very seldom now you were so busy. I wanted to speak of it, but fancied you had as much on your hands as you could manage. It would delight the dear woman to teach you all her delicate handicraft, especially buttonholes, for I believe that is where young ladies fail. At least I've heard them say so. So do devote your mind to buttonholes. Make them all over my clothes if you want something to practice on. I'll wear any quantity." Rose laughed at this reckless offer, but promised to attend to that important branch, though she confessed that darning was her weak point. Whereupon Uncle Alec engaged to supply her with socks in all stages of dilapidation, and to have a new set at once, so that she could run the hills for him as a pleasant beginning. Then they went up to make their request in due form, to the great delight of gentle Aunt Peace, who got quite excited with the fun that they went on while they wound yarn, looked up darning needles, and fitted out a nice little mending basket for her pupil. Very busy and very happy were Rose's days now, for in the morning she went about the house with Aunt Plenty, attending to linen closets and storerooms, pickling and preserving, exploring garret and cellar to see that all was right, and learning in the good old-fashioned manner to look well after the ways of the household. In the afternoon, after her walk or drive, she sat with Aunt Peace plying her needle, while Aunt Plenty, whose eyes were failing, knit and chatted briskly, telling many a pleasant story of old times, till the three were moved to laugh and cry together, for the busy needles were embroidering all sorts of bright patterns on the lives of the workers, though they seemed to be only stitching cotton and darning hose. It was a pretty sight indeed to see the rosy-faced little maid sitting between the two old ladies, listening dutifully to their instructions and cheering the lessons with her lively chatter and blithe laugh. If the kitchen had proved attractive to Dr. Alec when Rose was there at work, the sewing room was quite irresistible, and he made himself so agreeable that no one had the heart to drive him away. There, I've made you a new set of warm nightshirts with 4 buttonholes in each. See if they are not neatly done, said Rose one day, some weeks after the new lessons began. Even to a thread, and nice little bars across the end, so I can't tear them when I twitch the buttons out. Most superior work, ma'am, and I'm deeply grateful, so much so that I'll sew on these buttons myself and save those tired fingers from another prick. You sew them on? Cried Rose, with her eyes wide open in amazement. Wait a bit till I get my sewing tackle, and then you shall see what I can do. Can he really? Asked Rose of Aunt Peace, as Uncle Alec marched off with a comical air of importance. Oh yes, I taught him years ago before he went to sea, and I suppose he has had to do things for himself, more or less ever since, so he has kept his hand in. He evidently had, for he was soon back with a funny little work bag, out of which he produced a thimble without a top, and having threaded his needle, he proceeded to sew on the buttons so handily that Rose was very much impressed and amused. I wonder if there is anything in the world that you cannot do, she said in a tone of respectful admiration. There are 1 or 2 things that I am not up to yet, he answered, with a laugh in the corner of his eye as he waxed his thread with a flourish. I should like to know what. Bread and buttonholes, ma'am, bread and buttonholes. Chapter 17. Good Bargains. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon, and 4 boys were trying to spend it quietly in the library at Aunt Jessie's. Will and Geordie were sprawling on the sofa, deep in the adventures of the scapegraces and ragamuffins whose histories are now the fashion. Archie lounged in the easy chair surrounded by newspapers. Charlie stood upon the rug in an Englishman's favourite attitude, and I regret to say both were smoking cigars. It is my opinion that this day will never come to an end, said Prince, with a yawn that nearly rent him asunder. Read and improve your mind, my son, answered Archie, peering over the paper behind which he had been dozing. Don't you preach, parson, but put on your boots and come out for a tramp instead of mulling over the fire. No, thank you. Tramps in an easterly storm don't strike me as amusing. There Archie stopped and held up his hand, for a pleasant voice was heard saying outside, Are the boys in the library, Auntie? Yes, dear. and longing for sunshine, so run in and make it for them," answered Aunt Jessie. "It's Rose," and Archie threw his cigar into the fire. "What's that for?" asked Charlie. "Gentlemen don't smoke before ladies." "True, but I'm not going to waste mine," and Prince poked his into the empty inkstand that served them for an ashtray. A gentle tap at the door was answered by a chorus of "Come in," and Rose appeared, looking blooming and breezy from the chilly air. "If I disturb you, say so, and I'll go away," she began, pausing on the threshold with modest hesitation, for something in the elder boys' faces excited her curiosity. "You never disturb us, cousin," said the smokers, while the readers tore themselves away from their books to nod affably to their guest. As Rose bent to warm her hands, one end of Archie's cigar stuck out of the ashes, smoking furiously and smelling strongly. "Oh, you bad boys, how could you do it today of all days?" she said reproachfully. "Where's the harm?" asked Archie. "You know as well as I do your mother doesn't like it, and it's a bad habit, for it wastes money and does you no good." "Fiddlesticks, every man smokes, even Uncle Alec, whom you think is so perfect," began Charlie in his teasing way. "No, he doesn't. He has given it up, and I know why," cried Rose eagerly. "Now I think of it, I haven't seen him smoke since he came home. Did he stop on our account?" asked Archie. "Yes," and Rose told the little scene on the seashore in the camping out time. Archie seemed much impressed and said manfully, "He won't have done that in vain, so far as I'm concerned. I don't care a pin about smoking, so I can give it up as easy as not, and I promise you I will. I only do it now and then for fun." "You too?" and Rose looked up at the bonny prince, who never looked less bonny than at that moment, for he had resumed his cigar just to torment her. "You women are always asking us to give up harmless little things, just because you don't approve of them. How would you like it if we did the same by you, miss?" "If I did harmful or silly things, I'd thank you for telling me of them, and I'll try to mend my ways," answered Rose heartily. "Well now, we'll see if you mean what you say. I'll give up smoking to please you, if you will give up something to please me," said Prince, seeing a good chance to lord it over the weaker vessel at some small cost to himself. "I'll agree if it is as foolish as cigars." "Oh, it's ever so much sillier." "Then I promise. What is it?" And Rose quite trembled with anxiety to know which of her pet habits or possessions she must lose. "Give up your earrings," and Charlie laughed wickedly, sure that she would never hold to that bargain. Rose uttered a cry and clapped both hands to her ears where the gold rings hung. "Oh, Charlie, wouldn't anything else do as well? I've been through so much teasing and trouble. I do want to enjoy my pretty earrings, for I can wear them now." "Wear as many as you like, and I'll smoke in peace," returned this bad boy. "Will nothing else satisfy you?" she said imploringly. "Nothing," Charlie replied sternly. Rose stood silent for a minute, thinking of something Aunt Jessie once said. "You have more influence over the boys than you know. Use it for their good, and I shall thank you all my life." Here was a chance to do some good by sacrificing a little vanity of her own. She felt it was right to do it, yet found it very hard, and asked wistfully, "Do you mean never wear them, Charlie?" "Never, unless you want me to smoke. Then clinch the bargain." He had no idea she would do it, and was much surprised when she took the dear rings from her ears with a quick gesture and held them out to him, saying in a tone that made the colour come up to his brown cheek, it was so full of sweet goodwill, I care more for my cousins than for my earrings, so I promise and I'll keep my word. For shame, Prince. Let her wear her little danglers if she likes, and don't bargain about doing what you know is right, cried Archie, coming out of his grove of newspapers with an indignant bounce. But Rose, bent on showing her aunt that she could use her influence for the boy's good, said steadily, "It is fair, and I want it to be so. Then you will believe I'm in earnest. Here, each of you wear one of these on your watch guard to remind you. I shall not forget, because very soon I cannot wear earrings if I want to." As she spoke, Rose offered a little ring to each cousin, and the boys, seeing how sincere she was, obeyed her. When the pledges were safe, Rose stretched a hand to each, and the lads gave her a hearty grip, half pleased and half ashamed of their part in the compact. Just at that moment, Dr. Alec and Aunt Jessie came in. "What's this? Dancing ladies' triumph on Sunday?" exclaimed Uncle Alec, surveying the trio with surprise. "No, sir, it is the Anti-Tobacco League. Will you join?" said Charlie, while Rose slipped away to her aunt, and Archie buried both cigars behind the back log. When the mystery was explained, the elders were well pleased, and Rose received a vote of thanks, which made her feel as if she had done a service to her country, as she had, for every boy who grows up free from bad habits bids fair to make a good citizen. I wish Rose would drive a bargain with Will and Geordie also, for I think these books are as bad for the small boys as cigars for the large ones, said Aunt Jessie, sitting down on the sofa between the readers, who politely curled up their legs to make room for her. "I thought they were all the fashion," answered Dr. Alec, settling in the big chair with Rose. "So is smoking, but it is harmful. The writers of these popular stories intend to do good, I have no doubt. But it seems to me they fail because their motto is, 'Be smart and you will be rich,' instead of, 'Be honest and you will be happy.' I do not judge hastily, Alec, for I have read a dozen at least of these stories, and, with much that is attractive to boys, I find a great deal to condemn in them, and other parents say the same when I ask them." "Now, Mum, that's too bad. I like 'em tip-top. This one is a regular screamer," cried Will. "They're bully books, and I'd like to know where's the harm," added Geordie. "You have just shown us one of their chief evils, and that is slang," answered their mother quickly. "Must have it, ma'am. If these chaps talked all right, there'd be no fun in 'em," protested Will. "But a newsboy must swear a little, or he wouldn't be natural," explained Geordie. Both boys were ready and willing to fight gallantly for their favourites. "But my sons are not newsboys, and I object to hearing them use such words as screamer, bully, and buster. In fact, I fail to see the advantage of writing books about such people, unless it is done in a very different way. I cannot think they will help to refine the ragamuffins if they read them, and I'm sure they can do no good to the better class of boys who through these books are introduced to police courts, counterfeiters' dens, gambling houses, drinking saloons, and all sorts of low life. Some of them are about first-rate boys, Mother, and they go to sea and study and sail around the world. I have read about them, Geordie, and though they are better than the others, I am not satisfied with these optical delusions, as I call them. Now, I put it to you boys, Is it natural for lads from 15 to 18 to command ships, defeat pirates, outwit smugglers, and so cover themselves with glory that the Admiral invites them to dinner, saying, "Noble boy, you are an honour to your country," or if the hero is in the army, he has escapades and adventures enough in one small volume to turn his hair white, and in the end, he goes to Washington at the express desire of the President or Commander-in-Chief to be promoted to no end of stars and bars. Even if the hero is merely an honest boy trying to get his living, he is not permitted to do so in a natural way, by hard work and years of patient effort, but is suddenly adopted by a millionaire whose pocketbook he has returned, or a rich uncle appears from sea just in the nick of time, or the remarkable boy earns a few dollars, speculates in peanuts or neckties, and grows rich so rapidly that Sinbad in the Diamond Valley is a pauper compared to him. Isn't it so, boys? Well, the fellows in these books are mighty lucky, and very smart, I must say, answered Will, surveying an illustration on the open page before him, where a small but virtuous youth is upsetting a tipsy giant in a baroom, and under it the elegant inscription, "Richard Dauntless punches the head of Sam Soaker." It gives boys such wrong ideas of life and business, shows them so much evil and vulgarity that they need not know about, and makes the one success worth having a fortune, a lord's daughter, or some worldly honour, often not worth the time it takes to win. It does seem to me that someone might write stories that would be lively, natural, and helpful. Tales in which the English should be good, the morals pure, and the characters such as we can love, in spite of the faults that all may have. I can't bear to see such crowds of eager little fellows at the libraries reading such trash, weak when it is not wicked, and totally unfit to feed the hungry minds that feast on it for want of something better. There, my lecture is done. Now I would like to hear what you gentlemen have to say. And Aunt Jessie subsided with a pretty flush on the face that was full of motherly anxiety for her boys. Tom Brown just suits Mother and me too, so I wish Mr. Hughes would write another story as good, said Archie. You don't find things of this sort in Tom Brown, yet these books are all in the Sunday school libraries. And Aunt Jessie read the following paragraph from the book she had taken from Will's hand. In this place we saw a tooth of John the Baptist. Ben said he could see locust and wild honey sticking to it. I couldn't. Perhaps John used a piece of the true cross for a toothpick. A larky sort of boy says that, Mum, and we skip the parts where they describe what they saw in the different countries, cried Will. And those descriptions, taken mostly from guidebooks I fancy, are the only parts of any real worth. The scraps of the bad boys make up the rest of the story, and it is for those you read these books, I think, answered his mother, stroking back the hair off the honest little face that looked rather abashed at this true statement of the case. Anyway, Mother, the ship part is useful, for we learn how to sail her, and by, that will all come handy when we go to sea, put in Geordie. Indeed, then you can explain this manoeuvre to me, of course. And Aunt Jessie read from another page. The wind is south-southeast, and we can have her up 4 points closer to the wind, and still be 6 points off the wind. As she luffs up, we shall man the fore and main sheets, slack on the weather, and haul on the lee braces. I guess I could if I wasn't afraid of Uncle. He knows so much more than I do. He'd laugh, began Geordie, evidently puzzled by the question. Oh, you know you can't, so why make believe? We don't understand half of the sea lingo, Mum, and I dare say it's all wrong," cried Will, suddenly going over to the enemy to Geordie's great disgust. "I do wish the boys wouldn't talk to me as if I was a ship," said Rose, bringing forward a private grievance. "Coming home from church this morning, the wind blew me about, and Will caught out right in the street, 'Brail up the foresail and take in the flying jib. That will ease her.'" The boys shouted at the plaintive tone in which Rose repeated the words that offended her, and Will vainly endeavoured to explain that he only meant to tell her to wrap her cloak closer and tie a veil over the tempest-tossed feathers on her new blue hat. To tell the truth, if the boys must have slang, I can bear the sea lingo, as Will calls it, better than the other. It afflicts me less to hear my sons talk about brailing up the foresail than doing as they darn please, and cut your cable is decidedly preferable to let her rip. I once made a rule that I would have no slang in the house. I give it up now, for I cannot keep it. But I will not, under any circumstances, have rubbishy books. So Archie, please send these two after your cigars." Aunt Jessie held both the small boys fast, with an arm around each neck, and when she took this base advantage of them, they could only squirm with dismay. "Yes, right behind the back log," she continued energetically. "There, my hearties, you like sea slang, so I'll give you a bit. Now, I want you to promise not to read any more stuff for a month, and I'll agree to supply you with wholesome fare." "Oh, Mother, not a single one?" cried Will. "Couldn't we just finish those?" pleaded Geordie. The boys threw away half-smoked cigars, and your books must go after them. Surely you would not be outdone by the old fellows, as you call them, or be less obedient to little Mum than you were to Rose. "Course not. Come on, Geordie." And Will took the vow like a hero. His brother sighed and obeyed, but privately resolved to finish his story the minute the month was over. He had to know how it ended. "You have laid out a hard task for yourself, Jessie, in trying to provide good reading for boys who have been living on sensation stories. It will be like going from raspberry tarts to plain bread and butter, but you will probably save them from a bilious fever," said Dr. Alec, much amused at the proceedings. "I remember hearing Grandpa say that a love for good books was one of the best safeguards a man could have," began Archie, staring thoughtfully at the fine library before him. "Yes, but there's no time to read nowadays. A fellow has to keep scratching round to make money, or he's nobody," cut in Charlie, trying to look worldly wise. "This love of money is the curse of America, and for the sake of it men will sell honour and honesty till we don't know whom to trust. It is only a genius who dares to say, 'I cannot waste my time getting rich,'" said Aunt Jessie sadly. "Do you want us to be poor then, Mother?" asked Archie wonderingly. "No, dear, and you never need be while you can use your hands. But I am afraid of this thirst for wealth and the temptations it brings. Oh, my boys, I tremble for the time when I must let you go, because I think it would break my heart to have you fail as so many fail." Aunt Jessie was so earnest in her motherly anxiety that her voice faltered over the last words, and she hugged them all closer in her arms, as if she feared to let them leave that safe harbour for the great sea where so many little boats go down. The younger lads nestled closer to her, and Archie said in his quiet, resolute way, "Mother, I do promise to be an honest man and please God." "Then I'm satisfied," and holding fast the hand he gave her, she sealed his promise with a kiss that had all a mother's hope and faith in it. I don't see how they can ever be bad. She is so fond and proud of them, whispered Rose, quite touched by the scene. You must help her make them what they should be. You have begun already, and when I see those rings where they are, my girl is prettier in my sight than if the biggest diamonds that ever twinkled shone in her ears, answered Dr. Alec, looking at her with approving eyes. I'm so glad you think I can do anything, for I perfectly ache to be useful. Everyone is so good to me, especially Aunt Jessie. I think you are in a fair way to pay your debts, Rosie, for when girls give up their little vanities and boys their small vices and try to strengthen each other in well-doing matters are going as they ought. Work away, my dear, and help their mother keep these sons fit friends for an innocent creature like yourself. They will be the manlier men for it, I can assure you.